All right. All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Community Fathers. It's a video series that is aimed to get the conversation started amongst men. And we're excited today about the guest that we have, Bishop Kalem Kengga. Did I say that right?
That's right, brother.
Okay. And
Uh,
the reason why I'm excited about it is because, as young men, we all need that male father figure in our life other than our real father. And he was that for me in my mid 20s to early 30s. And today you're going to see and hear how much of an impact he made on my life. But before we get into that, we always like to talk about the three pillars because we have three pillars that we stand on, and we're going to introduce that. And but let me just say a little bit more about this video series. In every community, there are men who are quietly carrying wisdom, discipline, and purpose. Men whose lives can light the way for others who feel lost, powerless, and disconnected. Through Community Fathers video series, we're sitting down with these everyday leaders to uncover their habits, their mindset, and their strategies that help them lead their families and serve their communities well. Our mission is simple. Is to share these powerful conversations with men who may be struggling to find direction, purpose, and strength. By hearing from men like Bishop Kengga, who've walked the path of growth, sacrifice, and faith, we aim to mentor and uplift others into the rightful place as fathers, role models, and builders of a strong community. This is more than a video series, it's a movement to restore purpose, brotherhood, and leadership among men. And I'm Michael Hodges, the community father, and I have with me my co-host Luther Hall, and we're going to introduce the three pillars. The three pillars are the first and most important is solution oriented mindset because it's so easy to go down the rabbit trails of negativity about what happened to us as a people, or just there's so many different things that we could dwell on, but we have chosen to focus on the solution. So we want to be an example, we want to build the answer, and we want to become the change. And there are five aspects of this. It's reframing problems as opportunities to growth, take personal responsibility for change, ask forward thinking, constructive questions, stay grounded in faith and optimism, and then staying committed to growth in knowledge, habits, and mindset. Luther, do you have anything you want to add to the solution oriented mindset?
Absolutely. And good morning, community fathers. Our community, just what we're doing here at Community Fathers, and a solution-oriented mindset fits right into my military background. As a commanding officer, I don't discourage my NCOs and my leaders to not have problems. What I discourage them is them having a problem and coming to me without potential courses of action to help resolve the problem. That's why I highly encourage them to do. It's easy to say, sir, we don't have this, or we can't do this. What are your next steps to help us mitigate that problem so we can complete our mission? Like I tell everybody, there's two types of mindset in our community. There's checkers and there's chess. The checkers is the quick fix. Here's a problem, blah blah. The chess is the two or three moves down the road that's going to help you complete your mission or obtain a goal. So I try to keep my leaders as much in a chess mindset as possible because there is consequences, either good or bad, to the decisions that you make and the courses of actions that you choose. So I think that first pillar just fits right into my mindset of, like I said, as I am as a leader and what's helped shape me as a father, as a brother, as an uncle, just who I am to my family, my friends, and serving my country.
Appreciate that, sir. The second pillar is the strength of brotherhood. In the AV, we have what we need. You know, I don't mean to kind of go too far off tangent, but this morning I heard Minister Farrakhan on an old tape, and he said, if man, I should have brought it with me. I got it right here though. And I actually posted it on Facebook because it really meant a lot to me. But he said, see, here it is. If they're not giving it to us, we have a responsibility to give it to ourselves. And immediately that made me think of community and what the Village Project and what we're doing in this video series is we have a responsibility to give ourselves what we need. In fact, I don't ever think it was meant for us to get what we needed from the government, from the educational systems, and from other agencies. We as a community have the capability and the capacity to help ourselves. We just got to follow a definite blueprint so that there's not all this chaos and all these different opinions. And we can do this. In fact, I think that it was more likely that the government, the educational system, and other agencies were supposed to get what we need, not the other way around. And so to me, that's what the strength of brotherhood is. We're sharing life giving habits and hard won strategies. We're supporting each other with time, presence, and actions. We're showing up, stepping in, and doing the work together. And here's one that's very key: being vulnerable, sharing openly about life's challenges and failures to strengthen. I'm sorry, being openly about life's challenges and failures to strengthen trust and healing. So, Luther, what are your thoughts on the strength of brotherhood?
First thing that comes for me is listening to you speak on it is selfless service. You know, we
Mhm.
have we have such a community mindset of, you know, what am I going to get out of it? Instead of just wanting to genuinely, you know, just like, you know, if our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ humbled himself to wash somebody's feet, you know, why can't we, you know, lend our talents and, you know, like you spoke, you know, our wisdom, the things we've been through, and, you know, and share what we have, you know, with those coming up and with those who are, you know, even in our age group, and just, you know, a sense of selfless service and letting people know that they can belong and they can, you know, count on me.
Okay, thank you for that. And then our last pillar is mentorship in action, effective mentorship. I mean, that's just so key. You know, it's really easy to say, you know, we have something to offer people who are in need. But when you really start and get down to the nitty gritty, and you start to really see the trauma that people have been through, the hurts and the pain that they have suffered, it doesn't become that easy anymore to help them. And one of the scriptures that came to me, Bishop, was the one about Jesus when he called Lazarus out of the tomb. And he said, go and take those grave clothes off of him so that he may be free. And you know, a lot of people like to kind of sugarcoat it and make it seem like the odor had just magically disappeared. I like to say that no, that strong odor was still there, but you had people that were willing to get in there, do the work of unwrapping and freeing this man's mind, freeing whatever aspect we're talking about. But it's more it's work involved, and sometimes it's not as pleasant as we think. So mentorship in action consists of speaking truths with compassion, offering guidance without judgment, and living out what we share side by side. Luther, what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, that's, yeah, the three pillars under mentorship and action speaks to everything. You know, being able to be compassionate. You know, you may not went through the same traumas that somebody else been through, but you be able to listen to them first and foremost, hear their story, hear their truth, and, you know, and give them guidance and support, and just, you know, without judgment. You know, because everybody feels like they're under the microscope, and I think that's why men aren't vulnerable. You know, we're raised to be tough, strong. You know, keep it all in, and, you know, having that chance to be vulnerable, knowing that somebody's not going to judge us and going to help us, you know, develop mentally, spiritually, and physically. You know, that's a opportunity that we need to take and spread to our community, let them know that there are men out there who are willing to do that for them.
Mhm. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. So let's get into the journey and the life of Bishop Kalem Kengga. You know, um, I'm going to share some things about his life, and you might find him pretty impressive. He's a as ever since I've known him, he's been a educated man, and a lot of it I kind of picked up as. self-education. Are you okay, Luther?
Yes, sir. Just talking to my son.
Okay, all right, sir. If anytime you gotta get up and do something, it's okay, man.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
we don't want to stop you from being the father that you are. All right. Um, but current roles: Bishop Caleb Kingdom is a chaplain, and he currently serves as chaplain for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice at Sanders Estes Correctional Center in Venus, Texas, and where he teaches a weekly class called The Spiritual Man. And even when I knew Bishop out here in Lancaster, he used to go into the state prison out here. And one time he actually took me with him. And that's an experience when you're walking behind those bars and those gates closing behind you. But it was such a refreshing feeling when you go into this room of men that were just hungry. And part of the reason why I feel like they were hungry is because they were hearing something that they never heard before. And and that's what Bishop has been for me. And so let me just go on. He has an honorary doctorate in divinity and a doctor of humane letters. He has a BA in theology and counseling, a master of divinity, a doctor of theology, a PhD in religious studies. Okay, and let me get this computer to work properly. It's not for some reason. Come on, scroll down. Okay, there we go. He has degrees earned from the Breakthrough Bible College. He's a graduate in the school of a seminary in Temple. Is that Maryland, sir?
Yeah,
Temple.
Temple Hill, Maryland. Yes.
Uh-huh. His previous ministry roles, he was a Protestant chaplain at AV Hospital, and he was a senior Protestant chaplain at the LA County Probation Department from 1987 to 1996. He's the author of 9 books. I'm not going to read them all, but the one I'm most familiar with is The Roots of Deliverance. But he also has the Liberated Mind. And then I see one that just jumps out at me right now, Creating Your Own Reality. And I love that title right there. That's what this is about. We're
Yeah.
not going to wait for the government to fix nothing.
Right.
We're not going to wait for the educational system to fix anything.
Hmm.
We men, we
Yeah.
can create our we can create our own reality. So Bishop, I gotta get a copy of that book, sir.
All right. All right. You
Okay.
gotta
Okay.
send me the
Uh,
address. I'll
all right. All
shoot
right.
it to you.
All right. Is it on Audible or Spotify or anything like that?
No, that book is I wrote that a few years ago, so I don't have those avenues right now
Okay.
available. But I do have copies of the book.
All right. He has international reach. He's ministered in Ghana, West Africa twice, and teaching and mentoring on spiritual principles rooted in his writing. Family life. Married for 37 years to his beloved wife, and together they have raised 6 children and enjoy the blessing of 6 grandchildren. So that's pretty impressive, Bishop. Is there anything you want to add to that before I start opening up about how you've affected my life?
Well, I didn't say nothing in that bio concerning my 32 years there and where you're at in Lancaster, California, where we had our ministry there for 32 years. And that after we got finished with our assignment there, we moved on to Texas. But that's about it.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right. This next part is real easy because this is personal. This is how he affected my life. And it started with I was in my 20s, Luther. I was just a young man, and I had left home when I was 17. In fact, it was the last day of my 12th grade. I took a duffel bag with me to school because I wasn't planning on coming back. I had 9 younger brothers and sisters, and my father was in the middle of a crisis. He had gotten in trouble for molesting my sisters. He had lost his great job with LA County. And so he was just not a happy man. He got back into drinking and smoking. And me being this tall kid, the tallest guy in the house, I knew that I was going to be in the line of fire if I hung around for another summer without having anything to do. And so, I decided I was just going to leave. And so I came up here to Lancaster, but my sister and her husband, newly married, decided they couldn't have me, this big grown boy, walking around eating them out of house and home. So she sent me down to Santa Ana with my cousin who was in the Marines, my big cousin Chris, just in case he hears this. He took me in, but he gave me, he laid down the laws. You got to get a job and all of that. And because I actually had flunked that 12th grade, I had to enroll myself into a local school. And I ended up graduating from Santa Ana High School. But years later, I find myself back in Lancaster and I'm driving around. I had been through relationships. In fact, I had just gotten out of a relationship because got involved with a girl that went to Vegas and my heart was just crushed. I was rock bottom. And the only thing that I ever knew to go back to was church and God because that's the way I'd been raised. My mom had received salvation when she was incarcerated before I was born, and consequently, after she got out, she every day she would bring all her children in and read the Word of God to us. So it was really deeply embedded in me. But so I'm listening to Christian radio, and then one day I hear this voice, and it had the bass of a black man, but more than that, it had the sound of the streets in his voice. So, and I'm dwelling on this because I really believe this is important. It was like he was talking at a frequency that I understood. And I really believe, gentlemen, that young men go through that phase in their life where they they they're in search of that frequency.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so when I heard Bishop talking on the radio, immediately something said, I need to be under that. I need to be where he is. And so Luther, his church is way out on 198th Street and Avenue G, 20 miles out of town. And I'm driving this 1972 bucket of a Chevy Nova, but I'm decided I'm going to go and find out. I'm going to go find this church. And I went out there, man, and I plugged myself in. And Bishop became like a father to me. He just accepted me in. He was always laid back. He was always calm, cool, and collected. And that was exactly what I needed in my life at the time. But then more than that, more importantly, he encouraged me to start reading because I had always considered myself, I wasn't a reader. I was a math guy. I love numbers. I could do things with numbers, but I wasn't about to pick up a book, even though I knew how to read because my mom had raised us reading the Bible and all of that. So I was reading wasn't a problem. I just didn't think I had the time or anything. But he said, you need to start reading some books, young man. And then he said, and read books by Black authors. So he was the first one that started turning my mind to who I was as a Black man. Because growing up in this country is so easily to get confused thinking we were a lesser people because of our past, and what we went through. Most people, when we look at ourselves as Black people, we look at ourselves as a conquered people who were brought over here as slaves. But under Bishop, I learned that I was so much more than that. In fact, when he taught the word in the church, he taught it with an Afrocentric point of view, pointing out the Black people in the Bible. And he didn't have any issue talking about our history, our great history, and our great lineage. So one of the first books I read, Luther, was the autobiography of Malcolm X. And man, I was just so inspired by that book. In fact, I named my second son Malcolm, you know, and so that just made a huge impact on me. And then I was fortunate enough to be sponsored to go to the Million Man March in Washington, D.C. And Bishop was supposed to go, but I believe it was the time right around the time when your mother-in-law passed, or she
Yes. Yes.
so he passed those tickets on to me. And so while I was there, of course I'm in my 20s, and so I'm trying to figure out a way how I can get my party on and all of that. I wasn't there for the right reasons. But while I was there, I did hear the speaker speak, Minister Farrakhan. And he said, men need to be more hands-on in the community. And just that one line prompted me to change the direction of my career. I was working as a pharmacy tech for the LA County. It was a pretty decent job. But even in my heart, I knew this is dead end. I'm just going to find myself doing the same thing every day. I could see that it wasn't meaningful. So I decided I was going to start pursuing teaching. And that's what prompted me to become a teacher. So that's how much of an impact this man has had on me. And I just want to make sure I've gotten everything. Yes, yes. And so before we I ask you anything, I do want to say this one thing, Bishop. The Community Father uh, Facebook page it's geared to minister to men. The Village Project Facebook page is geared to minister to the community. I interviewed a lady yesterday for the Village Project, a white girl, and she told during the conversation she goes, "I'm a Viking." She goes, and I have totally embraced that. And in my mind, I'm thought, and why shouldn't she? Why shouldn't she embrace that part about herself? But because of what you have done for me, Bishop, I totally and thoroughly embrace who I am as a black man. And I'm going to let God use that in all its fullness. And I believe that even putting all of this together is him pouring into this African mindset of mine. So I don't get credit for any of these ideas, but I do understand that what he's using. He's using the maturity that I have as as someone who comes from the first race of beings on the planet. So
Yes.
those things aren't lost on me. I may not say a lot about it, but deep in my heart, I understand the maturity that comes with being a black man that's trying to lead the community. And so I just thank you, Bishop. I'm trying not to get emotional, but I thank you because you did that to me. And I don't think that it would have happened otherwise if I hadn't found you. So thank you, sir.
That was my pleasure.
Yes, yes. And
Yes.
this speaks to what we as men need.
Yes.
And this is the beginning. So let's get into who you were. We have because from our last conversation, I've kind of written down some prompts. And
Yes.
Luther, did you want to kind of start and read a couple of those prompts and then ask Bishop to expound on them?
Absolutely. So again, welcome, Bishop. Again, we
Right.
one thing I want to say is I understand that we are blessed with a lot of resources, but the one resource we can never get back is time, and time is our most valuable and most precious resource. So the fact that you're taking a moment of your most valuable resource to talk with us today does not go unappreciated, sir. Again, so I just want to say thank you again for your time and for about the knowledge you're about to share with us here at Community Fathers.
Yes.
So again, just based off what Mike said, and you see some notes here, but I want to hear from your point of view, your early childhood and coming up, and some of the hurdles you had to jump, and some things you overcome as you become, as you went through your early childhood and started getting to your early adulthood years, sir.
Yeah, okay. Well, I grew up in South Central, and I my mother passed when I was 18 months rather, and I didn't have a father at the home with me, and so as I grew up, I was brought up in the church, and I really enjoyed it when I was younger. I really wanted to be a preacher, not knowing that I was going to end up being one later on in life. But I just admired Reverend E.V. Hill, Dr. E.V. Hill at Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church, where I grew up at, and so I began to have a desire to go in that direction. But because I lived in South Central, being around the homies every day, man, I ended up straying off, and I wanted to be what they were. I wanted to do what they were doing, and so I got into that life, and the drug scene, all that, and I did that for a number of years, and really sent my grandmother through. Every Sunday she had to leave church early to come visit me in juvenile hall. That was pretty much where I grew up at. I lived there. I knew the counselors there. Everybody knew me in juvenile hall, and so that's kind of how my life spiraled. And I went in that direction for a while, and one of the last cases I caught as a juvenile. My grandmother allowed them to send me to camp, and I went to camp and got out, and after I got out of there, I started selling drugs, and one
Mhm.
thing led to another, and I ended up at 18 getting possession of dangerous drugs and doing a little adult time, and they sent me back to an adult camp. And after I got finished with that, I never did get it together for a while. I was out there just doing my thing, and I had my daughter was born when I was 17 years old,
Mhm.
and so that's kind of how the life was going, man. And then just in and out of the county jail, and just living that crazy life. And then finally, when I one day I was sitting on one evening, rather, I was sitting on the porch. Uh,
Bishop,
yeah,
Bishop, before you get into that story,
yeah, uh huh.
don't forget it. Don't forget what you were about to say. I
What?
just, um, I just want to ask you about. You said your father was
Yes.
removed, and you also mentioned something about your grandfather.
Oh
Tell us a
yeah,
little
yeah,
bit
yeah.
about your father and your grandfather.
Well, when my mother passed when I was 18 months, my father came to the house where my grandparents were living, and my grandmother told me that he actually tried to hurt me.
Mm,
He
mm,
was Creole, and he was
uh-huh.
able to pass for white
Ah.
back in those days. And so I
Mm,
don't know what that was all about, but my grandfather chased him away, and nobody ever seen or heard from him after that. My mother passed away. What they had at that time, a tube of pregnancy. She was
mm,
pregnant and it was in her tube. And then back in 1952, it wasn't nothing you could do about that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
she passed away, and so my grandmother took it from there during that time, and so she did a great job of raising me and
Mm,
giving me everything I wanted and needed, and really spoiled me as a kid. I was the only child. I had no
mm,
brothers and sisters, and so everybody in the hood became my brother and sister.
yeah, yeah,
That type of thing, it was a family thing,
yeah.
and it was back in the day where it truly was a village that raised a child, because even the neighbors would whoop you behind,
Yeah.
and so it was quite a neighborhood that I grew up in, and but as I continued to do what I was doing and wanted to be like everybody else, I didn't want to go to church. I didn't want to do any of that stuff, and
Uh-huh.
so I just kind of just stayed in that vein for a long while, man, and it wasn't until I got about 28 years old. Um, after I did a little time, I caught my last case, which was attempted murder. And after I got out of that situation, through one of the older homies telling his younger brother to take the case, because
Mm-hmm.
me and the other two brothers would have went to prison. So I escaped that, and it was just about maybe a couple of years after that. I was
Mm-hmm.
sitting on the front porch, and
Uh-huh.
I was smoking a cigarette, and I knew I could feel the tug. Uh, for some strange reason, I always knew God was in my life. I,
Uh-huh.
I can't explain that, but I would talk to God in the midst of all of my foolishness. I had no problem communicating with God. And I asked one night, I said, "Why is it that you want me to go to church, and why do I have to be different? My
Uh-huh.
homeboys are selling drugs. Everybody seems to be doing okay. Why are you bothering me?" and
Yeah, yeah.
uh and the voice, and I heard the voice tell me that you're not gonna ever be nothing, and you're not gonna ever have nothing till you get
Uh-huh.
back to where you need to be. And
Right.
so, and I still took a couple of years after that. I just
Mm-hmm.
did not want to do it. And finally, my cousin called me and invited me to a play, and I went to see a play called The Great White Throne. And
Uh-huh.
that was that weekend that my whole life changed, man. I stopped drinking, I stopped using drugs, and I knew that it was time for me to do something different, and so it just went on from there. 6 years after that, being in the church that I was in Inglewood, the bishop called me upstairs to his office and said we need a church in Palmdale, California, and I went up there. My wife that I'm married to now, her and her mother was in the church, and they were
Uh-huh.
living up there, and they didn't have a church to go to. So I told him that, well, if that's what the Lord is saying, I don't mind going up there and seeing about starting a ministry. And so that's where I went from my bishop, and I was there for 32 years with my
Uh-huh.
ministry. I built the church. We got up to about 1,200 members,
Hmm.
and I built a church and I purchased a church. And so when the assignment was over, we felt like it was time for us to move on to Texas. My daughter needed our help here, and
Hmm.
me and my wife migrated here to Texas, and we've been here for going on 7 years now.
Uh-huh.
This is where I got really involved in chaplain ministry. I was
Yeah.
a pastoral care ministry in the hospital. I
Uh-huh.
was a hospice chaplain, and then finally the prison opened up where I really wanted to be. Then I was able to land a position in the prison out here locally, and there's where I got started trying my best to continue to do what I was doing, helping these men to get out of prison and never come back. You know, I kind of I understand what the problem was,
Uh-huh.
and so I felt like I had something to contribute. So I got there, and so Monday I'll be 73 years old, but I ain't tired yet. So I'm still making it happen, man. And so I want to help. I'm really helping these men. I deal with all of them, all these different religions. I have
Uh-huh.
about 7 or 8 different religions that I deal with, from pagans to Catholics to Christians, and I have to service all of these. I have about 50 to 60 volunteers I have to manage, and so I'm enjoying what I'm doing right now, and I'm grateful and I'm thankful that I'm able to be used in such a way, and I bring my experience from the street along with my experience as a pastor to the chaplaincy, and so some good things are happening right now.
Speaking of
Absolutely.
streets,
Yeah.
Luther, I know that you've had men in your that have made an impact on your life.
Yes.
Have you not?
Yes.
Beside your father.
Yes.
Can you just share just a little bit? Then I want to hear Bishop talk about the good and the bad influence that men have had on his life.
Yeah.
Well, outside of my father, well, first of all, happy early birthday, Bishop.
Thank you.
And and just and before I go into a little bit about me, just hearing your story, only thing that came, two words came to mind: wow and grace.
Hmm.
Wow that you know. Let's be honest, your life is pretty much a cliche of all the movies they portray black men,
Yes.
going through selling drugs, attempted murder,
Right.
and hopefully come out good on the other side.
Yeah.
And then the fact that that God knew you had a bigger purpose, and He showed you grace, getting you through all the moments, so you are here today doing what you're doing is absolutely amazing. So thank you for sharing your story and being vulnerable, because it's not easy to tell our bad. It's kind of like social media. Like sports. Everybody posts their highlights.
Right.
They don't post how many times they failed.
Right.
So for you to be vulnerable and tell us about the times that you failed, or you weren't doing, living your purpose, that we don't take that lightly. So I thank you for that, sir. uh in terms of other men that mentored me, like Bishop, my grandfather was huge. Both my grandpa Hall and my grandpa Melvin, those two gentlemen, both prior military men. You knew your place when you stepped into their home. Like Mr. Hodges and I shared. No matter how many, I let him know. Like, even my brothers and my uncles, when we go home, we fall right back in line. I go to my parents' house, I still take out the trash. When we went to our grandpa's house, my dad, hey, let's get this trash out. Let's go cut the grass. We just knew our place in the home, no matter where we were, and that's just something I've always appreciated. And kind of like, related to the military, people flourish when they know their role and what's expected of them. And once you give them that, and how they can flourish in their role. You see great things from people, and I just think our young men, especially the men in prison that you minister to, they feel that this is their only role. Whatever they did, I don't have a heaven or hell to put anybody in, so I judge none. But they just think that's their role, and I just think you're going to show them that you have a different role and a different path that they can go down, and you're just going to continue to see great things as you mentor to these men. So, but yeah, I would say my grandparents, Mr. Hodges, my grandfathers also have played a huge role, and then there's some military mentors. Major Greer.
Hmm.
He's a PSYOP officer. He's had a huge impact in my life,
Hmm.
and he's really helped shape my career here lately. And then Lieutenant Colonel Vinci, he was a great guy. He really helped. He gave me my first command position, and just somebody who really cared, and talked to me offline about how's life going. It's easy to talk about the job and about military. He's one of the ones that just picked up and Major Greer as well, just pick up the phone and say, "How's life? How's the family? How are you doing?" And that's just good to get
Yeah,
somebody to talk to you offline. And I always have to be about the job.
yeah. So Bishop, who were these men in the streets? I know you mentioned John and Robert Barker,
Yeah.
Paul Burgess. What
Yeah.
what did these men mean to you?
Well, they were like my older brothers, man. They being the only child, man, I hung out with them, and they, like I was telling you before, they had their own way of trying to look out for me and protect me. And I think I told you how I got shot once, and I was blessed. The bullet went through my arm and bounced off my rib, and it didn't do me no damage. And so one of the that was John Parker, one of the older brothers. He was older than all of the rest of them. He told me that he told me he wanted me to carry a gun, for my protection. I said, man, I can't carry no gun, man. That ain't me. And so he said, well, if you don't shoot him, I will. So he went up to the liquor store and saw the guy that shot me, man, and he purposely started something with him so he could shoot him. And
Uh-huh.
but it didn't end up quite like that. But they looked after me, and they did their best to be what they
Mhm.
could be based on who they were and what they knew.
Yes.
We shot dope, we drank, we did everything. And if I like I told you, if I shot some dope with them like on a Wednesday and they was doing
Mhm.
it again Thursday, they wouldn't let me have none. They said, "No, you did this yesterday. You can't have none of this today."
Yeah, yeah.
So in their own weird way, they were trying to be what they needed
Yeah.
to be to me, man. And it was
Yeah.
strange. And then I had other guys, man, that was around my age that would look at me. This was really weird. I don't think I mentioned this to you, but we'd be
Huh?
drinking and getting high, and one of them would just look at me and say, "Man, you don't belong out here." I mean, I'm doing the same thing they're doing, but for some reason they could see something in me that
Uh-huh.
and it was like I was forcing myself to try to fit into a place I didn't fit into.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I mean, just out of nowhere, they said, "Man, I had one guy tell me, a friend of mine that's passed on now. He saw me one night and he said, "Man, you need to get back in church." And
Who?
I said,
Uh-huh.
"Well, who are you to tell me to get back in church? We here doing the same thing." But
Uh-huh.
strange things started happening to me like that, and they saw
Yeah.
something in me that I was trying to hide. And
Mm.
so eventually, I ended up getting in the E.V. Hills Church as a youngster, and that was a first father figure I had, along with the homies in the neighborhood, and they taught us, the homies taught us that women were supposed to take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
So I dabbed in a little bit of that for a minute, and I had my girl. She was ripping off her mother's checks and things, and I was getting money and things of that nature. And I was letting her take care of me and taking care of the things that I wanted. Now finally, after I got back in church, and
Mm-hmm.
got under my bishop and started watching how he did things, I said, "Wait a minute, man, something's wrong with this." So I knew something was wrong with it anyway. But when I started seeing how he took care of his family, I said, "Man, I'm supposed to be doing this for my family." And so he was really, really the first mentor that I started looking at. and emulating and dressing like him, and found somebody that I could start learning how what a man was really all about, and get
Yeah.
rid of all that stuff that I learned from the streets.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it all happened for me. For as that changed in my life, and
Hmm.
I didn't. I in my first marriage, I didn't stay married to my first wife. When I got off of drugs and got my life together, she wanted to continue to do what she was doing, and that wasn't working. So I stayed with that about 7 years. And
Hmm.
after 7 years, I said, no, I can't continue. And I had a church at the time, so I said, no way, I'm gonna try to pastor a church and deal with this crazy woman here. And so she don't want to make no changes, so I need to move on. And so that's what I did. I moved on, and of course I found the wife that I wish I would have had at first. And we've been together like this is our 37th year, but she's been right there for me, and we raised our children and did our thing together, and we still here enjoying each other, and we were friends.
Yes.
We were friends before we got married, and so we
Yes.
still got that close friendship bond. We just sit here in the house. It's just me and her now. All the
Uh-huh.
kids are grown, and me, her, and my two dogs, and I love it, man.
Yeah.
I got my friend in my life, and life is good, and we just appreciate what God has done, and helped us to get through all of the stuff that we got through, man. It's been a journey, man, and I appreciate the journey that I've been on, and
Hmm.
all that's still happening in our lives, man. Through the grace and the mercy of the Lord, I'm still healthy. Things are still going. All that I did to my body, I was able to still be healthy at this age, and so
Hmm.
I'm really grateful for that because I could really be broke down and tore down by now, but I'm still healthy. And they even the warden at the prison, he said, "Man, you walking around here like, like you a youngster, But
Yeah.
so I'm just grateful, man. I'm really thankful and grateful for where I've come from.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
man.
appreciate you.
Yeah.
I thank you for everything that you're being open about and sharing with
Yes.
us.
Yes.
Um, Luther, you have anything you want to ask him before, I go?
No, sir. Continue to proceed.
Okay. So, Bishop, let's move into your fathering experience.
Yes.
I know you started young. You said you became a father at 17,
Yeah.
and uh, you had another child like 7 years later, and then you had four more children with your wife now, the one.
Yes.
So, kind of tell us about that and how you raised them.
Yeah, well, when I got married to my wife, my wife now, she had two small children. She had a son that was, I guess, he had to be about 8 months old, and uh, and my daughter, she was about a year, I guess, when I met
Okay.
her. And I tease her now. She's 40 years old now. So I
Hmm.
tease her. I said, she kind of validated the relationship that I have with my wife because I started Bible studies in her mother's home. And this little girl didn't even know me. And she would just come sit in my lap.
Uh-huh.
And I tell my wife today, I said, she was validating, letting you know that I was okay.
Yeah.
Even before we even got anywhere near talking about any kind of marriage, the daughter was letting her know that, hey, I like this guy's energy. He seemed he gonna be okay. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, that's what happened. She had those two, and then we had two daughters together
Uh-huh.
that we raised. So all four of them were raised by me and my wife, and again, they're all grown and on their own now, and we're just grateful for what's going on in their lives. My oldest daughter, of course, she has four children, and
Hmm.
her oldest son is playing ball for Texas Tech, and he's going to probably be entering back into the draft. We're going to get ready for the draft in this next June. The
Hmm.
school, yeah, the school offered him 4 million to stay here another year. So yeah, he's good. He's JT Toppin, man. He plays for Texas Tech. You ought to check him out
No way.
sometime. Yeah,
I
yeah,
figured I figured Luther knew him.
yeah.
Yes.
That's my grandson.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So he balling, and he's just went back.
Big time.
Yeah,
He is big time.
he just went back to school, man, and then practicing, getting together with the new most of the guys that he played with last year, they gone on. So
Yeah.
he got a new team, and he's getting to know the new team, and they're working out right now, and getting ready for the next season. But
Nice.
yeah, so he
Wow.
yeah, so he's taking care of
Wow.
that.
Yes,
Yeah,
I know that young man. He
yeah.
yeah, he's special.
Yeah, and
Yes, yes.
he's taking care of his family and just bought his mother a home. And when he got his first money in college, he bought her a new one of them new Lexus, brand new Lexus Cadillacs. And so he's really taking care of his family,
Yeah.
getting ready to buy his brother a car. And so things are going well, man. Things are going well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you know JT, huh?
I do. I do. Me and my younger brother, we follow basketball, especially college.
Yeah,
Yes, we do know we talk about that young man on several occasions. So
yeah,
absolutely. So
yeah.
wow, that's amazing.
Uh,
So while we're on the subject of fatherhood, how would you describe your disciplinary style? How did you go about disciplining and making sure that that you're, I mean, obviously our children have other influences, and we try our
yeah.
best to be the main influence and keep them, on the, as we like to say, the straight and narrow. What
Uh-huh.
was your approach to fatherhood, and when it came to disciplining and making sure that your children stay the path as much as possible?
Well, it wasn't much discipline from me.
Okay.
Uh, I grew up, and my grandmother was the kind of grandmother that would lay me across the bed with a extension cord,
Yeah.
and I never did want to whip my children, man. I just didn't like that. They
Okay.
made, I mean, all the time that I raised them, they may have three or four whoopings, but I just wasn't there. I would talk to them, and unfortunately, I was because of that. My wife became a disciplinarian, and I kind of threw that responsibility on her because I didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to spoil them, and that's what I did. I bought them everything they wanted, and that was my job. If they want daddy, can I have? Yeah, you get it. So I can't take credit for being a real disciplinarian, in that respect. But my wife took care of that, and but I was there for them in every other way, spending the nights and with cheerleaders out of state and wherever we had to go with all of that, and I supported them in everything that they did. But that's kind of how that went, and just being an example, my I don't know, my daughter that's still in California, she told me, she said one day that when she came to the prison, I bring my children into the prison and let them talk and minister because they all can speak and sing, and she got up in front of all the men one day there at the prison, and she said I was her hero, and but because they watched my life,
Hmm.
and they know I wasn't a perfect man, but I did the best I could do by them, and I still have a wonderful relationship with all of them. So, but I wasn't the real disciplinarian. I was a guy that just wanted to love on them and give them what they wanted, especially them girls.
Yes. Yeah. I got two daughters. I know exactly where you're coming
Yeah,
from, and
yeah,
and I just think, and our path is similar when it comes to parenting. Like,
yeah,
I think maybe my daughters, maybe two spankings.
right,
And when I tell you, even after I gave them the spankings, I felt like this big. I,
right,
was- I felt
yeah,
I felt where I was like, man,
yeah,
but I just think, but what's gratifying to me, and like, your daughter calling you your hero.
yeah,
My daughters have both texted me out the blue, and just told me thank you.
yeah,
And the fact that I showed him, and to the best of my ability, what a man is supposed to be like in their
right,
lives.
right,
Especially like my older daughter, you know raising her, taught her how to change a tire, how to
right,
get out there and cut the grass, do her
yeah,
laundry. And one day she asked me, she's like, why do you make me do all this? I said, because there's a difference between wanting a man and needing a man.
yeah,
And you're gonna have relationships, and and I'm not gonna say you're not gonna get hurt, but if somebody decide up and leave, there's a difference between being hurt and helpless.
yeah.
I'm not
That's
saying you're not
right.
gonna hurt, but you're not gonna be helpless. You know how
That's
to take
right.
care of yourself and carry on,
Yes.
and keep moving forward, until your next relationship or whatever God has for you, but you're not
Right.
gonna be helpless.
Yeah.
And she's going through that now, and she's texted me, several times, just thank you.
Yeah.
And that's more gratifying than any spanking I could have ever given her. Hey, I received the way you raised me, and I thank you. And like you said, your daughter calling you a hero. So
Yeah.
we both share that sentiment, and that
Yeah.
feeling of like, you know what? I didn't always think I was doing it right, but
Yeah.
I must have done enough right for you to recognize me in that way. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you got that moment with your daughter, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's important to me that, especially my girls, man. I was, I probably the same type of father you were, because I had a couple of boys, man, uh, but in my first relationship, I had a son, and but my girls, I don't know what it is with a father and a girl, man. I think it's because of the way we were with females. We have an extra thing going on with our own daughters, and
Hmm.
wanting to be very protective, and looking at them that way, man, and doing what we can to protect them. But yeah, those girls, there wasn't nothing they wanted that they couldn't have.
100%.
Yeah, so
100%.
yeah, but they on their own, and they're doing well, and I'm grateful for that. And I told all of my girls, I said, until you find a man that can take care of you the way I do, I'm your boyfriend. I
Yeah.
told them that when they was kids,
Yeah.
and one of them still remind me of that today. They didn't listen to me, but that's what I told them.
Yeah.
And I saw this on either Instagram or Facebook. And if my daughters ever get married, it was a Asian father,
Yeah,
and right when he gave his daughter away, he said, if it should ever gets bad and it doesn't work out, all I ask for you is to return her to me the way I give her to you.
right.
And that
That's
was so
powerful.
deep. And
Yeah.
yes, and like, if my daughters ever get blessed to walk down the aisle, I can
Hmm.
guarantee you that is going to be a line. I'm going to tell that young man, I
Yeah.
can't guarantee it's going to work out. Lean on God, lean on each other. But if
Yeah.
it ever gets that bad, just return her to me the way I give her to you.
Yes.
And that stuck with me. And I was like, I'm like, if I ever get blessed to walking down the aisle, I'm saying that.
Yeah.
That is powerful. Yeah, that's powerful. Yeah.
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 So, Bishop, before we get into your passion about African heritage, I did
Yeah.
have one last question about parenting. What do
Yeah.
you think is the biggest impact you've had on your kids? And when we talked before, you kind of mentioned something about health and fitness. Can you talk about that?
Yes. I was driving home one afternoon after picking up my two children from daycare, and this matter of fact, this is right around 1990 or so. And I heard the spirit say that if your family gets sick, it's going to be your fault. Because I
Mm,
think a lot of times we as men, we want to make the money and take care of the bills and all that. But as a man, I felt like I was obligated to take care of the whole person. So I got to feed my family right. I got to make sure I'm bringing a healthy food in the house. And so I went home that evening, man, and I went in the house and I threw everything away that wasn't no good for them. and uh,
Wow.
and so I started teaching them health and nutrition. They didn't really like it, of course, they're children, and so but I was teaching them that, and now that they're grown, they're doing what I taught them then as kids because they saw the value of that. They didn't take it to heart when I first started telling them about it as children, but now they realize that the things that I was teaching them and telling them about their health and nutrition, they're practicing that right now. So that's a big thing for me. And taking herbs and doing the things that I do with my wife and making her drink. I make my own sea moss, and I make sure I make her drink, and I make my drink, and because we got to take care of these bodies, man.
Yes, sir.
Especially when you get to be my age, man. You can't you can
No.
you can't be tripping.
Yeah. And I don't know if you had the chance to watch the first episode that me and Hodges did, but you know, I tell him, I wake up early in the morning, go to the gym,
Yeah.
and that's part of my ministry and my giving my thanks to God. I wake up, I pray, I go to the gym, I drive home in prayer, and that's me tithing the first 10% of my day to Him to tell
Yes.
Him thank you. The hard part is done. You opened my eyes this morning,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes.
Air in my lungs, that's grace. And so I just wake up in prayer, my training, my body's part of my ministry of telling God thank you.
Yes.
And so I 100% relate to what you're speaking to in terms of the health and taking care of your family.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Well,
I'm big on that, and making sure that we keep these bodies healthy. But I never forgot that. You said if your family gets sick, it's gonna be your fault. And I said, oh no, we're not going there. So, because I was trying to take care of myself, but
Hmm.
I was letting them kind of just do their own thing, and I said, no, I got to change, flip this whole thing over, and make sure I'm taking care of these girls and taking care of my wife the way I need to take care of them. And my wife didn't even like to drink water,
mhm.
and so she could tell you herself, it was me that helped got her to drinking water and doing the things that was necessary, so we could both be healthy and grow old together,
Together, yes, sir.
and not be sick. So that was important to me, man. I don't believe
Yeah.
a man should be my age walking around with a stick, and that's the image that older people have, walking around with a cane, and say, no, not me.
No, yeah.
I'm not doing that. And so that's what I'm still very. I teach the people at my job same thing. Just had one of the ladies buy some sea moss and get her some oregano oil. I said, you need some help, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I still I practice that not only with my family but the people that I care about, and
Yeah.
oh yeah, so
Yeah.
very important to me.
Absolutely. And that even when I was a personal trainer, that's one of the things I spoke on to my clients. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we all want to look good in our clothes and go to the
Right.
beach and look nice. But I tell them, I don't think anybody truly knows their full medical history of their family.
Yeah.
And you just don't know what being in the gym and being healthy as you can be. You don't know what diseases you are naturally fighting off that could be
Right.
down your bloodline that is
Mhm.
laying dormant, waiting for you to live an unhealthy lifestyle so they can show
Yeah.
their face in your life.
Right.
So, yes, please look as good as you want to look and go new wardrobe shopping, but just know the lifetime benefits of you just taking care of yourself. You just don't know what dormant diseases and unhealthy things that are lying in your bloodline that are waiting to
Yeah.
attack your body that you are naturally fighting also. I definitely agree and concur with you on that, Bishop.
Yes. 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 Mhm.
So Bishop,
Yes.
I'm first of all, I'm going to give you credit for that line. If your family gets sick, it's your fault.
Yes.
Okay, but we're going to take it up a notch.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
What if we said, if the community gets sick, it's your fault, and
Yeah.
we address this to all the men?
Yeah.
One of the things that we do on the Village Project and Community Fathers is
Hmm.
try to find people with this type of knowledge and these type of skills, and then we kind of ask them to kind of share with the community, whether it's a regular basis or whatever, just whatever it is that they have that they think would help the community, they share. And
Yeah.
so I know I'm going to be reaching out to you because I think that a lot of us need to know about those things like sea moss
Yeah.
and oregano and things like that. And
Yeah.
I would love to have you be part of the Village Project and the Community Fathers where we're doing that to help build the community in
Yeah.
that way.
Yes.
So that's where my mind is going already,
Yeah.
sir.
Right.
So let's go in. Let's talk about your passion about African heritage. And I know you and your wife have researched your African roots. You've traveled to Africa multiple times, and you even taught the Bible from Afrocentric perspective. And as you're talking, I'm going to share some of the photos that we have of you and her in Africa.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, well, that goes back as you've already stated, even back in the ministry, back in the '90s. What happened was I got a hold of a book, and me and my wife went over to Catalina Island, and we were vacationing there with our younger children, and we was going through this book, and I looked at the book, and we started reading some of these truths that we were seeing in there, and I said, "How in the world are we going to be able to bring this to the church?" You
Hmm.
know, and so I struggled with that for a minute because it was going to be so off the wall to the church I knew, And so when I went back, I had to slowly. I felt like I need to slowly start introducing the church, and I had whites in the church too.
That's right.
That was another challenge for me,
Diverse
as
church.
you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, so I started sharing, but I had to share. I've said everybody needs the truth. I don't care if you're black, you're white. Everybody really needs to know the truth because we all have been deceived into believing lies concerning who we are as a group and as a people. So that's how it started for me, and then it just continued to grow from there because, as I said before, when I signed in with you today, I'm still starving, man. There's too much knowledge out there, and
Hmm.
I can't be what I need to be to others until I get what I need to get for myself. So, so that's how it all started for me, and then I began to what the question was, what can I do with this knowledge? And so the answer was start start where you have influence. So the first place of influence, of course, was going to be my family. So when
Hmm.
my children started getting old enough to understand, I started teaching them who they were. And my children had a lot of friends that were not black. So I never
Hmm.
taught them to be racist or hate anybody. I wanted them to know who they were so they wouldn't feel like they needed to try to be somebody else.
Hmm.
So enjoy. If you got a white friend or Mexican friend or whoever you got, enjoy your friendship. But I want you to enjoy your friendship from the perspective of knowing who you are. So
Hmm.
you don't feel like you need to try to emulate and be somebody else. And so, but that's kind of how that escalated, man. And I just went from, and then I met my African teacher in ministry. Who someone that I met that was born in Africa, and my son came running downstairs one day and said, "Dad, you got to hear this guy. You got to hear this guy." And I invited him to the church, and so it took us to a whole nother place of learning for us who we were as a group and as a people, and then it started showing. Then I started learning more about our true spirituality and the things that we practiced prior to what we got from Europeans. You know, a lot of people in church today don't realize that what they're getting in the church today, most of them are getting doctrine that came from Europe, and so European from the Roman Catholic Church, and so. But our relationship with Spirit and our relationship with God goes way back. As a matter of fact, it goes back 10,500 years before. And so I started grabbing the true knowledge that relates to us as a people. And one of the things I do with that knowledge is I don't put nobody down. I don't put the church down because the church is what helped me. So I'm not trying to put the church down, but I felt like I'm obligated to tell the truth. And so by me stepping up and telling the truth, I needed to know have some truth about my own self as well. So me and my wife decided that, she didn't know her father. I didn't know my natural father. I said, well, I don't need to be carrying a man's name that I don't know nothing about. I need to start my own legacy. So that's why I changed my name. I said I need to get me a good African name. And the beautiful thing about my name was I chose it based on the Kabbalah system. Your time of birth, your date of birth, and all of those things. It was astrological, and my
Hmm.
name meant who I am. My name Kalem. Is the divine spirit that inspire, and it also means the divine African spirit that guides the pen in writing, and I'm a writer, and
Hmm.
so my name fits who I am, and so me and my wife was very comfortable with renaming ourselves and starting our own heritage based on who we are and who we learned that we are. And so I told my church, I'm not telling you all to change your name because they said, well, we like Darrensburg. I said, well, that's okay. You can like that, but you need to be happy for what I did for me.
Hmm.
And so I think part of the problem I was having in my church in California too, man, I got a little bit too black for people. I was very serious about who I was as a black man, and I wasn't ashamed of that. And
Yeah.
I needed to be who I needed to be at the expense of maybe losing. I lost members, I lost money, but I couldn't continue to say what I had been saying that wasn't right on and wasn't the truth from the perspective that I had received and all the things, all the learning and the teachings that I was receiving, I had to start teaching what the real truth was. And so that's how I got into the teaching of African spirituality. And I told people all the time, I said, the reason why I'm here and I'm so confident in what I'm saying is because I can back up everything I say. You know, I have
Hmm.
evidence. I have proof. I
Yes,
didn't.
sir.
I didn't want to ascribe to. I don't like that God works in mysterious ways. People use that cliche because they don't know what they're talking about and they don't know the truth. You need to go find the truth. The problem with that is when you think you have the truth, you won't look for nothing else.
Mm.
That's the
Okay.
problem. You
Okay.
see, and so I don't. I have always all my ministry. I've always heard voice in the inside of me. That's not it. That is not it. There's more. There's more. There's more. And I've always been driven. Every year I've been driven and driven and driven. And I'm 73 and I'm still being driven. You know, I'm on YouTube. I'm everywhere seeking out truth as it relates to myself, so I can bring it to people. Because I really love people. I don't care
Yes.
what color they are. I love people and I want
Mm.
to see people change their lives. And so that's what I do as a prison chaplain. You know, I'm helping everybody,
Uh-huh.
regardless of what their religions are and anything like that, you know. So, but that's how I got involved in that. I needed to, I need to get really solid and confident in who I am.
Uh-huh.
That's important to me. I
Okay.
don't want to be faking. I don't want to be shaking. I got to be real. I got to be real with mine, you know. And so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
why I was driven to get what I needed to get for myself, and not just take a story that somebody gave me.
Yes. Well,
Yeah,
Yeah.
uh, uh, two things, Bishop. One thing you said that really stuck out to me, and then this next question is going to roll into your ministry. You
yeah,
said you lost members and you lost money,
yeah.
and then listen to your story. The first thing that popped in my mind was you didn't lose yourself,
Right.
and
Hmm.
Yeah,
that was so powerful. And I think a lot of us worried about what material things we'll lose if we make a certain if we stand up for ourselves and be who we are. Like,
yeah.
dang, I might lose. They might not be friends with me no more. You know, I'm gonna lose as a kid. I'm gonna lose this bag. I don't get this money. So the fact that you stay true to yourself and, like you said, you lost members, you lost money, but was so profound it stuck out. You didn't lose yourself, and I commend you for that, Bishop. And rolling into your ministry of men, since you've been doing this for so long, what do you find is the biggest hurdle you're running into that when men get vulnerable and talk to you? Like what is there like one key thing or one thing that you seem to see a repeated story of like men are struggling with as they, as you mentor them and tell them about God and their African history. Like are you seeing a common thing amongst our young men or that are men that you're mentoring that they seem to be struggling with the most?
The common thing that I've seen for years is people don't know who they are.
Mm. Can you
That's
expand on
the
that?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing that I've seen. Yes, we have learned to conform to behaviors. We have learned how to wear a mask and be what we feel like other people want us to be and how we want to be viewed. But we
Mm.
haven't been really real with ourselves. And so and because of that, I started a class in the prison with one of my volunteers on trauma healing. A lot of these men that's in prison, for instance, they're there because they have some childhood traumas that never were dealt with, and so they're hurting today. It's a 6-year-old, 7-year-old boy still inside hurting,
Mm.
and so this is the biggest thing I've seen, not just in prison, but with people. Even in my church, when I had my church, I told them year after year, I said the problem with people is we don't know who we are.
Hmm.
When you understand who you are, it will keep you from who you're not. See,
Oh,
when you don't know who you are, you experiment with life. You try this, you try that, you try
yes,
this,
sir.
you try different things. But when you know who you are, you can't come to me and bring me something that's not me. I'm gonna say, hey man, I don't want to deal with that. That ain't me, you know. And so that's why it's important for a person to know who they really are and be solid in that and be confident in the fact that this is who I am so they won't be pulled in different directions because they don't know who they are. That's the biggest thing that I see among people in the prison as well.
Right.
These guys come in my office for counseling, and I tell them in a minute. I say your problem is you don't know who you are. You don't even know how gifted you are. You don't even know the gifts that you have. You haven't even spent any time. I got a meditation class too in the
Mm,
prison. I allowed a couple of the white guys in the prison that's in the Eastern meditation. I start a class. I'm gonna send everybody to the meditation class. People need to get in touch with who they are,
mhm,
and get it and learn who they are as men, and
mhm,
so as a person,
Sir.
and understand that you were put here, to evolve and to grow and to, and so all that's what I do. That's what I've been doing half my life, is really trying my best to help people to understand who they are, because once again, when you understand who you are, it will keep you away from who you're not.
Yes,
mhm.
sir. Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna pass it to Mike. I'm soaking this in. I just had church.
Okay. All
I'm
right.
gonna pass it to you, Mike. I'm soaking that in. I appreciate
I,
that, Bishop.
All
I
right.
feel I feel like I could sit and listen to you two talk to each other forever. But you know what, um, Bishop, one thing you said to me, and I believe that this is one of the things that attracts men to you, is you said that you learned from Miles Monroe, Dr. Miles Monroe,
Yes.
um, that men need to be respected.
Yes.
You want to just expound on that just a little bit?
Yes. Well, when you look at when I learned from some things from Dr. Miles Monroe, he talked about how women were, emotional feelers. Men were analytical thinkers, and he taught that the importance of men being able to relate to women emotionally, because most of us were taught not to cry, not to do things that seemed like they were girly, but it
Hmm.
wasn't. It wasn't girly. It was just emotional. And when
Hmm.
a man doesn't show emotion, he cannot be emotionally connected to his wife like he should be.
Hmm.
And so that's why when she starts crying about something, he said, "Oh, woman, stop crying," But
Hmm.
you don't need to say that. You need to grab her. You need to embrace her. You need to, even if it's one of those moments, you need to shed a tear with her. That's what this is all about, And we've learned to be cut off from our emotions, our the feminine side. Everybody got a masculine and feminine side, in
Hmm.
the man and the woman, but we have been cut off from our emotions, and we
Hmm.
have gotten so deep in being this macho man that we can't even relate to the woman like we need to relate to the woman. So it is important for us to get a hold to that whole person again, a man or a person not knowing who they are, and have allowed other people to dictate to them what they should do. A man shouldn't cry. A man shouldn't do this. A man shouldn't do that. And so it hurts us as we live our lives, and as we go through our daily lives, doing what we think is right to do.
Yeah.
We think we know. Men think they know uh, what they don't know, and they think they know it, but they don't know it.
Yeah.
And see, that's the problem, because we won't admit that we don't know it. I tell the men in the prison and wherever I go, I say, now, if you was to really talk to your wife, if she was to be honest with you and tell you uh, how you really are in
Uh-huh.
bed, for instance,
Uh-huh.
she don't want to hurt your feelings, but you think you know what you're doing with her. Most men don't know what to do with a woman. They
Uh-huh.
think they know what to do with her. I say you need to ask her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk to her. Stop being so macho and say, "Honey, what do you like?
Yeah.
Am I doing things correctly?" But we think we know, and we ain't doing our job. They just don't
Yeah.
want to embarrass you, and they don't want to say nothing to you.
All right.
So,
One of the things that you said in our previous conversation is you said we can only be what we're conscious
of
of.
being, yeah.
So, what strategies do you have that would help men become conscious of a higher state of being? What strategies do you have?
Well, when we really make up our mind that we're not who we want to be, that's the
Mhm.
first place. That's the first. We got to admit that I'm not the man I want to be. And
Okay.
so then everything that I'm talking about now is something that's done internally. That's
Uh-huh.
another thing that we have not been taught correctly. We look outside of ourselves to God and everything else, when
Uh-huh.
when we have been prepared from the Creator to have everything within us. The
Yes,
scripture
yes.
tells us that the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, is in you. So
Was within us.
why are we looking everywhere else? Why are
Hmm.
we looking? You are the answer.
Yes.
Problem
Yes.
is we need to help our men get guided into these answers. And part of the things that we need to do is first admit. If you don't admit it, you can't quit it.
Yeah, yeah,
The first place you go when you go in to get some help to the hospital, you got to go to admissions. So you need to admit some things. Be honest with yourself that you just don't know what you say you know. And
yeah,
then that's the place you got to start. And once
yeah,
you say you don't know, you'll start asking some questions. Well, what do I need to do? And then that's when you can get some answers. But until we admit that we don't know what we think we know, we're not gonna get no help. We're gonna keep walking around thinking we got it together, and we don't.
You know what I
So
think? You know what
uh-huh.
I think is one of the biggest obstacles for men
Yes.
coming to that conclusion is we're busy. We
Yeah.
men just are too busy doing nothing.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
prevents them from coming to this conclusion that we're not it, that we're not who we want to be, you know,
Yeah.
and making those type of changes. And so,
Well,
yes.
that's one of the reasons why, Mr. Hodges, I started the meditation class. I said you need to go to meditation class and sit down somewhere and be quiet,
Mm,
be still, and start
yes.
being honest with yourself. And most people don't like to be alone because they don't even like themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They
Very
got to,
true.
they go in the house. They got to turn on the radio, turn on the TV, turn on something because they don't like being still and quiet.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how you get in touch with your authentic self. Is
Hmm.
learning how to be quiet and still and being honest with yourself.
So being still, yes. Okay.
Yes. And being honest with yourself and saying, look, I don't know. And then seeking out whatever you need to seek out so you can know. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
so that's very important. And that's one of the things I really strive hard to do. I know I'm not a perfect man, but I
Uh,
will I will sit myself down and check my own self.
Hmm.
Because we have to do that as a man, and as people that should be evolving and
uh,
not just be static in life. We need to be evolving and growing. That's what life is all about.
yeah,
It's growing and evolving and vibrating at different rates of speed and energy. We need to be going somewhere and
yeah,
not stuck and
Sir.
not stagnant.
yeah,
But we're not honest enough with ourselves to seek out what we need to seek out because this is what we've been taught, this is what we've been indoctrinated with, and we are looking outside of ourselves for the answers that we already have. We just need some guidance as to get to those answers.
yeah. Hmm.
You are
Luther,
the answer. You are the answer that you're looking for.
exactly. Luther, you have anything before I start to wrap this up?
No, 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 no. Please keep going. Like I said, I'm in church right now. Bishop
Okay.
is he's on fire, and I'm enjoying
Yeah.
every second.
And as you were talking, Bishop, I was actually thinking there's so much more to this man that we need as a
Yeah,
community. And so, I mean, I'm not going to presume and to think that I can rely on you to share all this deep information with us. But in a sense, I kind of am asking you to do that. Like just the simple thing that you wrote, be still,
yeah,
because I'm constantly trying to share information with strategies with men and with the community.
yeah,
I want to make that a theme for my next strategy,
yeah,
the importance of being still.
yeah,
But I'm going to send you a link to both, and I want to invite you to join the Community Fathers Facebook page and the Village Project. And I want you to feel free to share those type of little tidbits that would
yeah,
help us to become more aware of our conscious selves.
yeah,
We desperately need that.
yeah,
The same thing I just told the girl in the last interview. The community desperately needs what you have. And it's not that they don't have it, they just don't have an idea of how to
yeah.
tap into it.
That's it. That's it. That's
So,
we suffer from amnesia.
uh-huh.
You see, we suffer from from not remembering who we are. So it's important to help guide people into remembering who they are. This is
Uh-huh.
who you are. I don't, regardless of who what you think you are today, but this is who you really are.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to help them to understand this is who you really are.
Yes.
You are more than you have become. You are much more than you've become. And we
Yes.
have to help lead people into understanding that. And
Yes.
it's biblically, psychologically, we have to help people to understand you are way more. You haven't even touched the surface of who you are.
Yes.
And you got
Yes.
to teach people how to walk in that.
Yes.
Walk with confidence. When I'm teaching, man, I tell these men, this is how you need to walk.
Yeah.
Walk with your head up. Well, knowing who you are, you know,
Right.
and be confident in that. You
Yes.
and that's very important to me. I really try my best to get these men to understand. You're gonna come back to prison if you don't recognize who you are and the man that you really are and who you were created to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh huh.
And a lot of that comes from repetition,
Yes.
repetition. And I'm sure Luther can speak to this better than me because he's a man that does reps and he works out in the gym. But
Yeah.
we gotta repeatedly tell ourselves who we are.
You have to
Otherwise, we
practice.
we will suffer from
Yeah.
amnesia, you
Yes.
know? And
Yeah.
so, yes, sir. And I just would like to get little tidbits from you that I we can start having the community repeat,
Yes.
so I don't want to, definitely don't want to overwhelm you with any of those things right now, but just know that that's just a thought. That's the beginning of
Yeah.
something beautiful, of us working together to build a stronger community. And
Well,
so
Mr. Hodges, I have roots. I have roots down there where
uh
I'm in Texas now, but I have roots down there. I have a church
yeah,
that I built down there. I still have part of me is still there, and
yes,
whatever I can do to contribute, I don't have a problem with that, man.
all right,
This is what I do.
so
This
all
is
right, sir,
what I do.
I
Yeah,
appreciate you.
yeah. Hmm.
This has really been a blessing. I really feel like I'm hoping that all the conversation that we have with men are this rich in
Yes,
content, because this is what we need. And in order to set things in order, it's important that us men become realigned first.
yes.
And I think that this is the beginning. These type of conversations is what's going to help men to become realigned. So I appreciate you, Bishop.
Hmm.
I appreciate Luther and his contributions,
Yes,
and I'm just looking forward to working together with you, even though we're distant. I'm just
yes,
looking for us moving forward in this, in what was established here today.
yes,
So thank you for being part of the Community Fathers video series.
yes.
This is the second episode.
Yeah.
I'm just so glad that you were part of it, Bishop. You still
Yeah.
mean a lot to me. I will always have the utmost respect for you. I'm for eternally grateful
Let
for
me say this. Let me say this.
yeah.
I thought about this earlier
Hmm.
when I started teaching. Uh, uh, with my African spirituality and going in that direction.
Uh-huh.
You told me one Sunday at church when you came back.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
You said he said, Bishop, I know what you're saying is the truth, but I'm just not quite ready to leave my Church of God in Christ roots. I
Uh-huh.
had big respect for that because
Uh-huh.
you were the only person that was honest enough to just be honest and say, I'm not quite ready for that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's very important. You were man
Yeah.
enough to tell me that, and so that kept the respect level right where it needed to be. I said, "Well, I have to respect that because
Yeah.
maybe this is a little bit too much too soon,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I just wanted to say that, Mike. I really appreciated how you handled that.
And that, and that's absolutely huge because one thing you don't want to do, you don't want to pour water into a bucket that has holes in it.
Right.
And with Mike not being ready to accept
Yeah.
what you had to give him, that's exactly what you've been doing. So yeah, that's huge. I'm glad you shared that.
Yes. Yes. I wanted to make sure that he understood how much I respected that.
Yeah.
I never forgot that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's interesting because I've had conversations with people that are kind of contributing on my site, and I
Hmm.
was trying to tell them to tone down what they were doing.
Yeah.
And when they came, one person in particular came back and said, this is the conviction. This is how it was given to me to share. And you
Yes.
know what? I had to back off. And I said, you
Right.
know what? I respect that.
Right.
And I told that person, I said, the way you see fit, you share it.
Yeah.
And so that means a lot to me that you said that. And I totally understand
Hmm.
how we come to that. You know, even as heads of great companies, I don't think that we are looking for the yes men. We're
Right.
looking for that person that's going to stand on their own and they have their own unique identity that which they don't want to deviate from.
Right. That's right.
And and even though Luther said it, he said you lost members, you lost money, but you didn't lose yourself.
Right.
I'm going to put that as a quote. You inspired him to say that.
Yes.
So, you know, and we just need to keep doing that for each other
Yes.
until we change the entire community.
Yes. I
So,
agree. I agree.
yes.
Hmm.
All right.
It's
So,
gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
all right, sir.
They got the right man. They got the right man. You the man for the job.
All right.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You and Luther can make it happen.
Yes, right. There we go.
You
Thank
got
you.
a good team. Got a good
Especially,
team.
especially if we can count on you for advice, sir. We're in good,
Absolutely.
man. And
Anything
so,
I can contribute, I'll contribute.
all right. All
All
right.
right.
So thank everybody for joining us. And we're going to wrap it up and join us next time for the Community Fathers video series.
All
Take care,
right.
gentlemen.
Okay. All
Take
right,
care.
brother.
Thank you,
Have a
gentlemen.
good one. All right.
All right.
Take care.